Hey everybody, Omar here, your knife of the party guy, and I am back with another fun-filled video for you. And today's video are on South African knives that might be in anybody's collection. In other words, if you have a knife collection and it's very, very eclectic, in other words, the only thing that your collection would have in common is that they're all high-quality knives, well-built, and that's it. My collection is very specific. It's strictly just South African knives only. That's how much I've actually, in other words, that's how much I actually praise South African knives. It's just their use of materials, the way they put the knife together, the style of the knife, the way it's going to look, all contributes to whether or not that knife is actually considered art. So up at the top row here, you'll see some knives that might wind up in anybody's collection. And then down here, these are also some knives that might wind up in someone else's collection, but they're going to probably be a little bit foreign to you. In other words, you probably won't be getting any of the knives down here on the bottom until you've discovered the ones up at the top. So I'm just going to go through all these knives one by one and explain what the deal is and why they might wind up in someone's collection. The first one is the Andre Thorburn L51 compact flipper. And this one is, definitely one that would wind up in anyone's collection, just stylistically. I mean, it looks almost like it's American made. I mean, there's nothing too foreign looking about it. You got a nice drop point blade. The handle looks like something that an American knife maker would probably do, but it's been done with a little bit more flair. I mean, you don't usually find hand or finger grooves on a knife like this in the American style. I mean, they just don't do that. Most knives made in America are just usually straight across. But this is definitely an example of taking an American idea and maybe putting a little bit of a spin on it. But the way the knife looks, it looks like an American knife. It doesn't look all that foreign. There's nothing really weird about this knife, except maybe the blue carbon fiber twill, which I think is one of the reasons why it makes it South African. It's all just one material, though. Blue carbon fiber twill, and that's pretty much just, you get the knife and it's like pow. Stylistically it looks fantastic. The blue is really, stands out. You won't find something like this with this much material, where the materials actually stand out that much on an American knife. Plus the way it's made. I mean, if you take a look at the knife, look at all the screws up here, and that's something that looks a little bit different. You probably won't see that on an American knife. This is also what makes it South African. Take a look at the file work on that. That is all done by hand, right? So you can clearly see there's a South African flair to this. However, stylistically, it looks more like an American knife. You got a nice drop point blade. It is a regular flipper, right? You would find on a regular American-made knife. So I would probably say anyone that's an extreme knife collector, this knife is definitely in their collection in some iteration or form. This one is probably the most popular in the blue carbon fiber twill. This one is not a one-of-a-kind. There's probably maybe 50 of these knives that were made by Andre Thorburn, all in the same iteration with the blue carbon fiber twill, and it just seems to appeal to that many people. This is also probably one of the most requested knife orders that Andre actually gets, and that's why this knife will probably never ever leave his lineup. So if I were to compare this knife to an American knife, think of it like a South African version of the 0562 ZT. That's what this knife is to people in South Africa in a way, and that's why this knife has gained such popularity in America. The next one is the Dakar flipper made by Trevor Burger. Here's another knife that doesn't look at all that weird. I mean, you might even mistaken this for a really fancy-looking ZT. Again, regular drop point blade, right? The shape of it, we don't have as many curves on it this time, right? As we do on this one, where like practically every finger has a place for you to put your your finger groove in there, right? You got the index, the middle, and even even the ringer finger and pinky is well conformed on this knife. Here it's a little bit more Americanized, right? He just gives you just the finger 12 for the index finger, right? But then the rest of it, all three fingers just go on here. So it's more of like an American feel to it. Again, I mean, the pivot, that doesn't look very foreign. We've seen this pivot before on like a ZT, so this is one of the reasons why this knife is very, very popular. You can go outside the box of an American knife without having to go, with your eyes at least, without having to go too far off and into getting a knife that looks a little bit weird and funky. So yeah, the Trevor Burger Dakar Flipper is definitely one of those. I mean, even the pocket clip doesn't look all that weird. I mean, it looks more, like an American pocket clip. So there's not a lot of eye candy on it. But yeah, it's a very popular knife. Really, just fantastic. One of the things I forgot to mention is that most South African knives are made with ball bearings. And in many cases, ceramic ball bearings. If you're not familiar with ceramic ball bearings, for those of you that are new to my channel, ceramic ball bearings are used in knives as a better option. A lot of people say, well, they use ceramic ball bearings because it makes the knife smoother, but actually that's not true. Ceramic ball bearings are actually used in knives to prevent for the longevity of your knife. Because if you had steel ball bearings in the knife, you'd have to oil it because steel ball bearings cause friction, which cause heat, and which would cause shoddy action. And ceramic ball bearings, they're perfectly round, smooth, and are just, they don't produce friction, so there's no reason to oil them. So you don't necessarily have to oil them, but it doesn't hurt. And it just so happens, all right, if anybody tells you, I'm not saying that that's why they use ceramic ball bearings, but it just so happens to be smoother than regular steel ball bearings, at least in my opinion. So if anyone out there is saying that people use ceramic ball bearings because it makes the knife smoother, it's not really that. I don't really consider that true. It is more of an effect of ceramic ball bearings. The next knife on my in the lineup here, this is made by Willem Steenkamp, another predominant South African knife maker. This guy, again, it looks more American than it does South African. The only thing that would make this thing stand out are the scales on it. Look at the black marble, shredded marble carbon fiber on that. That is just spectacular. You're not going to see that on any American knife. However, the the sheen on the marble carbon fiber really stands out, and yet stylistically it doesn't look all that far off from like an American made knife as far as the way it looks. It doesn't look foreign, it doesn't look weird. Again, regular drop point blade, right? Nothing modified on it. It's got really great action, and again, take a look at the shape of it. Just the choil for the index finger, and then all three fingers kind of fit perfectly on there. So he didn't do anything that funky as far as the shape. And again, here's the South African flare with the file work. File work is very popular in South Africa. That is not something you'll normally find on an American knife. They just don't have the time to do this made by hand work on a knife in America. We just don't. I'm not saying that there aren't any skilled knife makers that couldn't do that. They just don't have the time. That takes a lot of skill to do that. And of course, he doesn't do it all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom, just halfway only, versus looking at Andre Thorburn, where it's all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom is the file work. And the file work is usually never ever repeated. Like you'll never see this pattern ever again on a knife. And a lot of them, they're quite different each time. So the next knife is a huge sucker. This is like just gigantically big, but if ZT were to make a custom knife, probably would look like this. This is the Clyde Chalenore Raptor, and this knife is actually discontinued. They no longer make it. He made about 50 of these knives. They're not all the same. I believe 25 of them, 25 of the 50 he did with inlays. And then the other 50 he did with this machine pattern on it. And what's interesting about the machine pattern is that on none of the 25 knives that he made like this is the pattern actually repeated. This is the only one of a kind with this pattern on it. Not only on the front side, but on the back side. It's completely different. So that's another reason why you know, when you're getting a custom knife from South Africa, one of the most popular reasons to get one is to go for the concept of one of a kind. You want to have something that nobody else will ever have. And that is the reason why South African knives, I think, pretty much made that concept popular. The idea of a one of a kind. There are other knife makers that also push that, but I seriously believe South Africa is the first. Again, another non-foreign looking knife. You know, I mean, you'd find these in just about anybody's collection. I mean, it doesn't look all that weird. This is the, if I can remember, this is the Willem Steenkamp Raider Flipper. It's a smaller knife. Again, drop point blade, right? Which we always find, and you know, it kind of seems to be the normal look of blade shape is the drop point blade. It's also probably the most popular, which is something that South African knife makers began to realize. When they're trying to introduce their art to Americans, they want to make sure that they're not making something that's not going to sell. Because if the knife looks too weird, more than likely it won't be in anybody's collection. No one's going to buy it. So South Africa has to kind of say, hey, we understand what you like, but take a look at what we can do and what we can make, you know, and consider this. One of the things that I like about this knife is this gives it sort of like a Western theme look. You know what I mean? Whenever I see this knife, I think of like the Hollywood cowboy. Think of like John Wayne in like, say, white hat with the white vest, and he's got like the gold gun and like the, you know, he's got like white pants on. He's looking real sharp. This would be like in his pocket as a knife that he would carry alongside his gun. You know, it just looks like the Western Hollywood cowboy knife to me. Especially with the silver, right? The silver pocket clip, and the pivot looks really just silver. It just looks like something a cowboy would carry, a Hollywood cowboy would carry in their pocket. That's why I got this one. And plus it's a black and white theme, and who doesn't like the black and white theme on that? So, yeah, this one would definitely be, and again, it would wind up in someone's collection. We're now moving into a little bit foreign territory with custom knives. This is now the appearance of where we have a blade with a different type of material. All the knives here on the table up until then, all the one up to here were all M390. This one was CPM 154, which is not foreign to Americans. Kershaw actually put out quite a few knives in CPM 154, but now we've got Damascus or Damasteel. So now what we're looking at here is a full dress piece, and it's on the top row only because the shape of it, in other words, again, it doesn't look foreign. There's no finger twirls at all. Basically, your hand just grabs the whole entire thing. It's curved for the hand as a whole, versus, again, this knife here where you've got a finger choil for the index finger, and then the rest of the three fingers would go following this curve here on the knife. So that's how that is. But on this one, there are no curves, really. He just kind of somewhat gives you an index finger choil, but then he's basically kind of designed this knife to conform to the hand as a whole. This is an Arucus Blumeris full dress piece. And of course, after this video, I'm going to put links on my channel so you guys can check out all these knife makers and what they make. You might find something that appeals to you, so don't worry about that. So this is a full dress piece, and this is definitely, while stylistically it looks like an American knife, the materials on it you're not going to find on an American knife unless a custom knife maker, a custom American knife maker decides to do it. And even if he were to do it, it would be a South African influence. That's just my opinion. But we've got marble carbon fiber for the handle, and then we've got a blue Timascus bolster. Timascus is very, very expensive. It's not a cheap material. The marble carbon fiber, again, very expensive material to get, but not rare. Okay, so yeah, and the reason it's a full dress piece is because there is no part of this knife that does not have any artwork on it. We've got the blade with the Dama steel on it, right? You've got the blue Timascus bolster. You've got the marble carbon fiber handle, and then on the back we've got the rope file work, which is a lot more intricate looking. I mean, I don't see anybody wanting to do this because that's done by hand. So again, it takes extreme skill to create that look, that rope file work. Then we take the Dama steel and make it into a backspacer to give it that more of a flare look. And of course, it's finished off with the blue titanium liners. The whole knife just works incredibly well. There's a lot of eye candy on the knife, but stylistically, right, it doesn't look all that weird as far as the shape of the knife. And again, this is made by Arugas Blumeris, and the model for this knife is L15. Yeah, it's just a regular flipper. So the top row, knives that might wind up in anybody's collection. Down here, these are also knives that might wind up in anyone's collection. However, these are a little bit more foreign looking, and you probably won't even graduate to getting anything like this unless you've seen something like this up here. It's not like you're just going to go to a store and go, oh, I like this knife, I think I'll buy it. It just won't happen. You're kind of conditioned as a knife collector to like things a certain way, so that if you're going to go through this route, you're going to have to change your way of thinking of how you envision a knife and what a knife is supposed to be. Because when you get down to this bottom row, it's more art than actual tool. Not that these are not art, or not tool, more tools than art, but they sort of, these are sort of opener South African knives. In other words, they were made to introduce you to the knife makers. They know you're not going to go for something this weird down here, so they kind of give you these sort of knives that would appeal to you, that are not so far out there. And most people that know South African knives will probably name off one of the knives up on the top row here as their choice. So before I go down here, let me tell you the names of the knives up at the top row, if I can remember them. This is the Andre Thorburn L Compact 51. This one is the Trevor Berger Dakar Flipper. This one is the Willem Steenkamp Hornet. This is the Clyde Chalenore Raptor, which you cannot get anymore. It's discontinued. This one is the Willem Steenkamp Raider Flipper, and this is the Arugas Blumeris L15 Flipper knife. So all the knives up at the top row, and you can get any one of the top row in any iteration you like. You just have to know what materials you want on your knife. You're probably not going to be able to do that until you discover what South African knives are all about and what the materials that are on your knife are about. So let's go down here to the bottom row, because now we're going to get into knives that look kind of funky. Starting with this one. This is the Des Horn. I can't even remember the name of this one. All of a sudden, I'm sorry, I apologize, but my mind has just gone blank. I really wish I could remember the name of this one. It'll probably come to me. But this knife is really considered quite foreign to the American eye. First of all, where's the flipper, right? what you're looking at here is a front flipper piece, which is the flipper is up here at the top. That's not something that Americans are too used to. I mean, if you're a beginning knife collector, you probably wouldn't even know how to open this knife. I can be honest with you, I didn't know how to open it either when I first got it. But basically, it's an index flipper, and then it pops open. So the blade shape is not all that strange, right? It looks more like more like a modified drop point blade. Using the word modified. It's a very slim looking knife. Probably reminds you more of the CRKT CEO flipper in a way, but not really. This is what we have here now. We've got a Damasteel bolster, which is not something you're used to looking at. And then down here, the handles are made of what's called inorganic material. The inorganic material on this is called C-Tech. C-Tech is really just mesh wiring and resin and all types of foreign material that's molded into this shape. And it looks really fancy, but really it's an inorganic material. But stylistically, the way it looks fantastic. You would never, ever guess that that is molded resin. I mean, you probably would think it was carbon fiber if you weren't looking too closely. Around the knife here, more of the C-Tech shows in. Again, it's all sort of molded material, steel and resin and a bunch of other materials all put together, and the point of all that is to create an extremely sturdy handle that can easily rival titanium, and C-Tech does the job quite well. So we got more file work by Deshorn. So those of you that are Spyderco collectors, you might have heard of Deshorn. He does have a knife called the Spyderco Deshorn, and it's made with Cocobolo wood. Actually, I kind of want that knife, but I can't find it anywhere because it's discontinued. However, yeah, this knife here, which I can't remember the name of, it'll come to me soon, and if when the video is over, if I don't remember it, I'll definitely include it in the link. We've got the screws are jeweled. They're engraved screws. So again, that's all detailed work done by hand. You're not going to find that. ZT isn't going to put anything out like that. Spyderco would never put anything out like that. It's just too time consuming and too much work. But these screws almost look like jewelry. And then we've got the carbon fiber backspacer running all the way up to the top, which I love. It's like full carbon fiber backspacer from the top all the way down to the bottom. Again, the steel on this is even more foreign. Probably a steel you've never heard of. It's called Nitro 77. This steel goes through an incredible heat treatment process. Definitely not something you would even come across, but this steel is a specialty steel. Deshorn's actually the only one that actually owns most of the Nitro 77. What makes this steel so special is that it goes through an incredible heat treatment process, and then it's dipped in liquid nitrogen 4 times to give it strength. And Deshorn is highly skilled at creating the steel. This thing is a super sharp sucker that can easily rival M390. I don't have any paper to cut with, but if I did, I'd do it. I'm sorry, I didn't bring that out. Of all the knives on the table, this next one is the one that really impresses me. Out of all the knives here, out of all the South African knives here on the table, this is the one that really impresses me the most. Just about every knife you see here on the table, even up to here, is made with ball bearings, either ceramic or steel. Guess what? This is the Deshorn Mvubu. This one doesn't have any ball bearings on it. It's just a washer knife. And check out the smoothness of it. Look at how smooth that is. That is ridiculous. That beats just about any ball bearing knife, and nobody knows how he does that, but it's It's very, very smooth. Very smooth. Again, we've got the engraved screws. Not engraved screws, but we've got sort of star tool screws, which are not engraved, but this is also a specialty of Death's Horn. And this is actually one of his basic knives. This is not even considered one of the work that Death's Horn really does. You have to take a look at his website to see the knives that he normally makes. But yeah, this one is almost always in my pocket, just because it runs on washers and it's super smooth and there's no ball bearings in it. I just love it. And again, the Nitro 77. We've got blue carbon fiber handles on this one with a laminate K2 gloss spray. That's what gives it its lamination. And if you look at it, it almost looks 3D, where it's kind of got that sheen to it. If you like, you can look right through the carbon fiber and you're seeing sparkles out of it. That's the effect of the K2 gloss and what that does. It's just a terrific piece, and this is the one that usually winds up in my pocket most of the time. Just spectacular. I do have another one of these in my collection that run on ceramic ball bearings, and that one's like overly smooth. I don't think I can even enjoy that knife as much, just because as soon as I open it, it falls shut. But this one is perfect. It's almost like it's just on ball bearings, but really, it's not. It's just washers only. And if I'm not mistaken, they're not even phosphor bronze washers. I believe they're brass, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll have to check. But again, this is a front flipper. You open it from the front of the top of it, which is something you'd have to get used to. So yeah. This next one is made by J.D. Van Diventer. Now we're getting into funky shapes, which is why the bottom row is starting to get a little bit more funkier and funkier as we go on down the line. But yet this one, you know, after you've investigated all the knives in the top, you're probably going to go, well, let me see what else South Africa has to offer. And you might go for something like this. This one is called the, oh, God. I hate myself for not remembering. Oh, God. I hope it comes to me. This one's made by J.D. Van Diventer. This one has got fluted carbon fiber on it, and we've got a nice titanium pot clip. Again, not a lot of eye candy, but if you look closely, I mean, look at the carbon fiber. That's all done by hand. All those sort of like the swooping sort of texture on there, that was done by hand by J.D. Van Diventer on both sides of the knife. So that takes skill to do that. It's also a thin piece of carbon fiber over the titanium. And then we finish off with a black carbon fiber backspacer. Again, what makes this knife kind of weird looking is the shape of the blade. I mean, that is really funky. You know, it would be good for like drawing cuts, you know, because it's got a little bit of a belly on it, but it doesn't have too much. But yeah, and of course, on a regular knife, you'd probably prefer the belly to be a little bit more up here. So again, you know, that's the artistry of the knife maker, what he does with the blade. So this one is now considered a little bit more like art rather than tool, but still a very functioning looking knife. Runs on regular steel ball bearings. Oh God, I wish I could remember the name of this one. I hate that I don't remember. So yeah, J.D. Van Diventer, as you can see, the knife does give you the shape of it. He gives you just the finger trail for the index finger, and then the rest of the fingers kind of fit there. Again, versus the Andre Thorburn way of making a knife for this style, where you got 1, 2, 3 grooves. I mean, that's just kind of a little bit weird, but it feels really good in your hand when you're using it. That's not to say that this knife doesn't. He just kind of accomplished the same thing, but does it a little bit differently, using your 3 fingers as a whole. So now we're going to come to the weirdest looking knife in my collection. You're going to have to be a fan of this gentleman's knife. This one's made by John Arnold, and this one I do remember the name. This is called the John Arnold Mufada. What makes the Mufada really interesting is that the name of the knife, Mufada, means fat man. And ironically, John Arnold used to be a fat man. He's since lost weight, but this was definitely a knife that became very popular in his lineup. It's a really funky looking knife. It's an index front flipper piece. You can also use your thumb, but it's more comfortable using your index finger to open it. Very, very smooth. Runs on steel ball bearings. The materials on it are zirconium and white Westinghouse. Now, a lot of you guys may not be familiar with white Westinghouse, but white Westinghouse is actually refrigerator material, refrigerator insulated material. They found out that what happened was with white Westinghouse, how this came to be was that I believe as far as I understand it, a warehouse burned down somewhere in South Africa, as far as I understand it, with refrigerators filled with this material. And then when they put out the fire, they found a bunch of this material, and knife makers realized how durable and almost indestructible this material is. And they decided to go ahead and put it on knives. So just the fact that that material is put on a knife makes this a very, very compelling piece. And it works really well with the zirconium. And again, we see some serious art on this one with the yin-yang symbol smack dab in the middle of the knife, which is really great. You know, again, it just looks fantastic. The screw, we've got one dark blue screw, one gold screw, sort of to offset it. And it's definitely a compelling looking knife. You've got a nice black titanium pocket clip on that. We now come to the blade shape. I don't know what this blade shape is. I've never seen it before. It's really quite foreign, but it does work. We've got a little bit of a belly on there for nice drawing cuts. And also, this is actually considered a tactical folder because it comes down to a point. You know, so it'd be good for stabbing. If you ever needed to use it for self-defense, you could. It is a tactical folder. So, John Arnold, Mufada. This one, again, God, I gotta get the names down for this. This one is also made by John Arnold. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. I'm not very good at that. But again, I'll put it in the link. You know, at the end of the video, I'll put it in the link. This one is made by John Arnold as well. This one is definitely a tactical knife. Take a look at the blade shape. It's very, very sharp. It's a modified Warncliffe style or modified sheep's foot, but it comes down to a point. We've got barely a belly on it, so you could use it for drawing cuts, but it's not that effective. But yeah, it's more of a tactical folder, not only on the front of the knife with the blade, but also the back of the knife with the back spacer. This piece here, which is made of carbon fiber, you could probably use this as like a Kubaton to seriously injure somebody. I mean, if you were going to get yourself into a fight, you don't have to open the knife to use it, or to defend yourself. You could just use the back of this back spacer and seriously injure somebody, maybe, you know, get him in the arm or injure the guy in some way so you can, you know, get out of the way and run. So it is a tactical folder. Overall, what makes this knife so interesting is John Arnold's signature. I'm not going to do this, but this has a moon glow back spacer that glows in the dark. And it looks really fantastic. And the back spacer is made of carbon fiber. The hole, I don't know what that's for. I'm assuming that's for a lanyard, but I'm not sure. But yeah, this is definitely a tactical piece. Really beautiful with the Dama steel blade on it. Really looks fantastic. So as you can see, these would also be, you know, considered quite foreign, but once you graduate up at the top, you'll find you're probably going to want to check out some other knives that are made in South Africa and begin to understand what the thought process is behind these knives or the making of these knives. This one is probably an incredibly very popular knife. This is called the Lex K by Trevor Berger. Thank God I remember that one, right? So the Lex K by Trevor Berger is a knife that is just about in anybody's collection. People love this knife. They eat this one up. This one has carbon fiber on the front of it with a, what I'm going to say, like a modified sheep's foot blade with a point comes down. Again, it's a tactical knife. You use it for stabbing somebody. This is a frame lock, unlike all the other knives on the table, and also this one. These two are frame locks, meaning it is the handle is the knife, versus a liner lock where we have scales that actually hide the frame, and then they cover it up with the scales. So that's a liner lock versus a frame lock where it actually is the knife. This one has an acid wash blade, which is one of the reasons why I got it. This is more of like a tool. You can actually beat this one up to hell, and you don't have to worry about scratching it up because it's already got scratches on it. It's got a nice blue pivot ring. Not a lot of eye candy on this one, but still very, very, very nice. Still just more than what you would see on a regular American folder. We've got a nice blue pivot ring on it. And again, the action is stellar. This knife runs on ceramic ball bearings. So there you have it. These are all South African knives that might wind up in anybody's eclectic collection. 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 or more of these knives would be in anyone's high quality collection, just because they all seem to have something that Americans like. They're not so far out there from what we like. I mean, I wish I brought out my 0562, but I mean, if you took a look at this knife, it really looks a lot more like a ZT with fancier materials on it. Something to consider. So if you guys are all in the production world and you want to stay there, that's perfectly fine. But you really should consider checking out something that's a little bit more flair, something that's a little bit more foreign, just to change it up a little bit if you're a collector. And I do get a lot of the knife makers out there that collect knives like I do. They just kind of sit there and go, well, I just like to collect knives made in the USA. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I've got a Kershaw collection. And they're all made in the USA, and they're all incredible looking knives. But, you know, I decided to change my collection up a little bit by going South African, and this is the direction that I've gone in now, because I began to realize that as a collector, I kind of enjoy knives for the artistry rather than the tool, which is why I got into this hobby. Because believe it or not, my collection doesn't even touch the surface of what South African knife makers can do. There are some South African knife makers out there that are so foreign that even I can't go there yet. I just don't have it in me to go there. And we're talking about knives made with shark teeth and whalebone and all kinds of organic material. I mean, I think I may have even seen a South African knife made with seaweed. I mean, it's the materials that the South African knife makers do to these knives and can make them just as strong and just as compelling as anything made in the USA is what impresses me. And the lengths that these knife makers go to create art is one of the reasons why I'm a South African knife maker today. So having said all that, that is pretty much it for me and this video. I do hope you guys found this video helpful. In any way, please comment on my channel. You know, I've got a ton of subscribers. I do plan on making my first live video soon, but I'm going to have to figure out how to do it because I'm new to that and I haven't figured it out. So, not to let this video run any longer, this is Omar, your Knife of the Party guy, signing off, hoping you'll find one of these knives in your knife collection someday. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.